We are in progress with Rachel Leyco, filmmaker, writer, director, and the film is called "Thank You for Breaking My Heart." Great title, and a great launching point for introducing you. Can you tell us more about yourself and then set up the film for us, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm Rachel Leyco. I'm a multi-hyphenate filmmaker, writer, director, producer, actress. I do all the things.
Awesome.
And yeah, this is my film. Thank you for breaking my heart. It's a fantasy drama comedy, and it follows a heartbroken artist, documentary filmmaker who is seeking to end her lifetime through this administration I made up called Administration of Souls in Sorrow, and AKA ASS for short.
Right.
And in the process of applying to end her life, she has to create a either written or visual essay. So she opts for a visual documentary essay on kind of sharing why the reasons why she wants to die. And in that process, in retrospect, she discovers a new hope and a new lease on her life.
Thank you. That is a great setup for the film. Really well introduced. And it just occurs to me as you set up it with this fantasy context of like this future um world, this sense of control is immediately brought up and the sense of lack of control with respect to having to submit an application to into your own life. So
Mhm.
that kind of underpins the narrative from a perspective of, well, here's a depressed, suicidal person who feels out of control. She doesn't have the
Mhm.
control. And yet, in the process of being asked to justify her desire to end her life, she finds some sort of meaning in it. And, the things that stuck out for me, um, my job is to assess the story and to go into the narrative and really understand what's the narrative telling us about life and how do we reflect on it and how can we improve our own lives based on the story. And, the key things that jumped out um, were some of the lines that said, "You couldn't let me go. You were responsible for your own suffering and face yourself before you expect someone else to fix you." So these ideas of, you know, the relationship. So I guess to back up a little bit, there's a relationship between these two people, and the
Mhm.
breakup seemingly is why this person wants to end. It's, we've all had our first love breakups, and they are horrific. It's like the most
Mhm.
painful thing you experience in your life. You grow up, you break bones, you do this, you that, but when your heart gets broken, it is the most horrible thing, and that's what we're dealing with in your narrative, in your
Mhm.
script, in the film. It's a broken heart, and here we have these two couples, and in by way of like this kind of virtual fantasy world. Um, in the process of wanting to end her life and do this essay, the one couple who wants to kill herself is able to call upon this other, and they have like this post, dialogue about their relationship, and that's where those lines come in about like not letting me go. You're responsible for your own suffering, as we all are responsible for most of our own suffering, or a lot of it, adding
Mhm.
to it, and certainly shaping it based on events that happen to us that are out of control, are out of our control. So that said, I guess the first question to play it forward is always, how did your life and your own personal experience set up what you are exploring here? How, were you just put on that path?
Yeah. Well, yeah, thank you for those reflections on the film. And yeah, I mean, I think this film has been a long time in the making in terms of just my own experiences and my life in general. Like you said, just really drawing from my own past heartbreaks, and not even just heartbreaks in romantic relationships. Also, there's a little bit of it of in the film, exploring like her family and friendships and all of that. But the core of the film is the romantic relationship,
Right.
because, like you said, I think it was at a point of just kind of reflecting on my past relationships and what I've learned from them, and remembering that, like, of course, any heartbreak, whether it's your first, your most recent, it's not fun. It's never fun. It's never easy. It's oh, extremely, extremely painful, more than any type of, like, for me at least, any physical kind of pain. And it stays with you much longer, throughout your life. And I've always really been interested in exploring the nuances in relationships. And I also was at a point in my life where I was trying to practice more gratitude. And so I was looking back into these past relationships and trying to uncover, is there something good I can take out of them? Is there something that I learned? And if so, what is that? And so this film itself is, like you said, I think before we started, is a dissertation and an exploration of, you know, the lessons I've learned, how I how those relationships have impacted my own view of myself, and where I was at the time when I was writing it and where I am now. Um, so I definitely brought into this film so many aspects of my life in terms of um, uh, those relationships, but then also weaving in mental health, because I think in that time too, I was going through a lot of my own, like, depression and anxiety and mental health issues, and um, trying to figure out, like, how that also impacted myself as a whole. And I've always been interested in the intersectionality of mental health, my queer identity, my API identity, and how I can translate all of these things that I'm very curious about being human into film, which then all kind of culminated into this story.
Thank you. There's a lot there to unpack. What is API identity?
Just Asian American Pacific Islander
Oh, okay,
identity.
got it. So yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned that. The idea of identity is huge, and this idea of the film explores let's say 20 something. Is that
Hmm.
fair? So
Yes.
20, gosh, that's such a
Yeah.
young and you know important, vulnerable, and a huge milestone. So you've grown up, right? This character's grown up, and in the context of, even the film mentions this generational shame and colonization. I think those two words were specifically mentioned. So this idea of, like, there's all this past trauma that you're just born in, and you kind of figure it out as you go along, and it sets you up for this inferiority complex. So here we are, we have
Hmm.
this inferiority complex. We meet another person, they think we're great. All of a sudden, it's like, oh yeah, you think I'm great, I'm perfect, and I'm solved. Like, my problems are over. Oh, now you've
Hmm.
left me. Oh shit, fuck you. You suck, I suck. I want to end it all, kind of thing. Like, that's, short story kind of happens to all of us because we're all looking
Hmm.
for somebody else to fulfill us, right? And then we figure
Right.
out as we mature beyond that, hey, that's not going to happen. That's not going to work.
Right.
Whether they leave us or they don't leave us, it's just, there's still, the work is on us to find that
Hmm.
inner um, sense of our own identity. And then it's like,
Right.
well, what do we identify with? We identify with, these forms. There's all these forms. There's, like you mentioned, there's API, or, JYD, or it's endless, right? So many different contexts and nationalities, and
Hmm.
just you can blue eyes, red eyes, green eyes. I mean, anything's right. So there's all these different contexts, and then there's the heart, right? And the heart
Hmm.
has is formless. And here's the heart looking for a way to construct a safe place where it feels it belongs. And I'm just imagining in your film that glowing
Hmm.
heart that you have. And so now we go to the meaning and to the work, and how do we create that? How do we do what we need to do as humans adulting and becoming um aware,
Hmm.
becoming
Hmm.
aware. And so, then we've got lines like, being brave enough to own who you are, being brave enough to face who you are. And then, this concept of suffering as grace evolves. And by grace, I mean there is something that is like given to us by this suffering. There's a
Hmm.
gift in the suffering, and the gift is it kicks you in the ass to grow and evolve, right? There's two ways you can go, and you can devolve or evolve, and
Right.
here it is. So now, kind of with that in mind, the meaning of the film and your own experience and the narrative as well, how it sets up. Here's this character who has to face the truth of herself, the truths of her identity. What is she choosing to identify? How is she choosing to identify? And how do we find our way out of that
Hmm.
situation
Yeah.
that we're put
Yeah.
in?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's definitely a question that I try to pose for, audiences and whoever's, viewing it. And for myself, obviously I have my own perspective and my own answer or attempt to answer to that in the film, but it's definitely much more nuanced than that. And um, and speaking to all of those lines that you kind of pointed out, and especially talking about pain and suffering, which is like a really huge, theme in the film that I'm trying to explore and uncover what pain and suffering means and why we humans must experience it in this world, and I think it's not a black and white answer, right? Because Tala, who is her ex-girlfriend that shows up, has her own perspective and her own point of view of what that pain is. Like you said, that line that she says that, why can't you be just responsible for your own suffering? And um and to your point earlier, like there's a lot of suffering that we can't control that is just put upon us, and that we didn't choose, that we don't I don't think anyone actively chooses to be in pain, right? There's things out of our control in life that just happens and that sucks. But then it's also, again, like looking at it in terms of it's easy to stay in the pain. It's easy for us to just continue to suffer and like allow, I know for myself, like I can easily just allow myself to stay in that pain and think about it and dwell in it and but that doesn't serve me or my highest good, so um for me it's really trying to instill that like different perspective, instill some hope and trying to transform our pain into power truly. And I think that is just like the little bit of that arc that Mahal goes through at the very end of the film. We don't get to see her full transformation in terms of like her healing, but I think, I end it in that way because I just want the audience to see like, oh, here's just that little bit of step forward that she's finally taking for herself. Um, I think I strayed from your question because I don't remember what
No,
it
you
was,
did
but
great. I mean, you totally did. I did not. I think, the question really is at the heart of the question is, well, how do we not, you know, end up indulging or dwelling in despair, and how do we
Mhm.
come out and use that pain to empower ourselves? And the couple things that I'm hearing from our dialogue and the film is, you personally took it upon yourself to follow this path of gratitude. So you decided, like, hey, I'm going to reflect on these things and see what good has actually come out of it. So you're
Mhm.
changing your perspective. And I think the film, the key perspective shift for the character who's suicidal is getting compassion from the other character. There's that point where she says, "I'm looking at the bravest, most bravest person in the world," and and that changes her. That
Hmm.
builds her awareness to reflect that, yeah, she does have that quality and that she has come out in ways and she is being truthful, right, with who she is. And that idea of coming out, I mean, whether it's queer or not, it's
Hmm.
all everybody's
Yeah.
got to come out with being truthful with who they are. And we all have things that we're insecure about. So her partner's reflecting her back to her like, hey, I see you, being brave in this courageous way where you're saying who you are and continue to be honest with yourself. So I see that honesty
Hmm.
and having somebody else reflect and acknowledge that that honesty is important and valuable and you're doing it and you're capable of it is the initial key
Hmm.
to her having compassion for herself. What do you think of that? Is there another turning point?
Um, I just as you were talking, that's another actually big piece that I really wanted to explore in the film is the dichotomy and the differences of how people perceive us and how we perceive ourselves. And for Mahal, like when she hears that and her reply is, "Oh, that's not me. I'm not brave. Like, what are you talking about?" Because at that point she doesn't believe that. Like that's not at all how she sees herself. But then you have other people outside of her life who sees her as that. And so, and I've experienced that in my own life, which is what I brought into this film because, and I still experience it to this day. There's many moments where I don't feel brave or I have so much self-doubt and but then, I have other people around me who just continue to uplift me and encourage me. And so it's like, it's so interesting how in life, you can see yourself one way and someone else can see you a completely different way. And so like, how does that inform our identity and how we see ourselves and at that time in life? So yeah, and I think, and there's no like right or wrong black and white answer to that. I think it's a continually, um, kind of evolving thing that we do as humans, like, oh, okay, someone sees me this way. Is that how I feel? Do I want to see myself that way? You know?
Yeah. And I mean, first of all, I acknowledge how brave you are just to come on this. I mean, here's this guy out of nowhere, I mean, who am I? And we're talking about, soul stuff here and how our souls work. And it seems like the onus is twofold. Like here in the context of your film, one person is being a light for another, and our job is to be a light for ourselves.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
if we can be a light for ourselves, by default, we're going to be lights for others.
Right. Absolutely. 100%. I believe that.
Me too. And I think, your film does a great job of exploring how to stand strong and move on. And before we move on to the last question, I just want to turn it over to you in terms of the meaning and takeaway from your film. Now that you're on the other side of it, you've done it, you've seen it,
Mhm.
you've lived it, you've edited it, you've watched it. What do you take away from the movie?
Mm, it's a great question. We're still in the middle of our film festival circuit, and we filmed this last October. No, 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 last August. Last year. And so this year we're just in our film festival circuit, and I've tried to make it to every film festival, and so I've seen it so many times now, even before the festival circuit, obviously in post-production and editing, viewing it many, many times, and then seeing it on the big screen at film festivals. And it's so interesting because it's always a different experience every time. You know, always when I go into it, I'm like, oh, I've seen this so many times. Like, I know what happens. I know everything. Like I don't think there's anything else I can maybe like take away from it. But every time is honestly different and I tear up or I get emotional at different points every time I view it. And I think that's also just what's so beautiful about film. You can rewatch something so many times and take something different from it or zone in on something different from before based on where you're at in your own life. And so but I think in general, overall, for me, what I've taken away from it in retrospect, is is this, I mean, it's very thematic to the film and very on brand because one of the things that I am very grateful for is that I am just very proud that I was able to make it with my community. So I am very community driven with my projects, and and it's also always just a miracle to make any film, and to have people that believed in this story and this project. A lot of my own, filmmaker friends here and their friends, and so many people that just like came together to make this because they believed in it. And it's an indie film, so it's not like everyone's making a bunch of money. So it's truly a passion project. And um, in general, I think that's kind of just what I take away from it is this gratitude and gratitude that I can make a film, that I have the ability and the resources to do that. Gratitude that I can tell this story that is very personal and special to me. And one thing actually also that I've learned through this recent film festival circuit process is that I think as artists, we can always it's very easy for us to uh, be very sensitive and to audience reactions or awards or all of those things, recognition, right? Of course, we want to be recognized for our art, but something that I've recently been learning is just kind of detaching from all of that and just being proud of the work itself. The fact that it even got into a festival, that it's even being shown, that's great. But even just the act of completing the film with my community, that's it, that's the reward itself.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm so glad you said that because it's so germane to the topic you're exploring in terms of recognition.
Hmm.
I mean, here we are, as human beings in the narrative, looking for recognition, others to recognize us. And the key thing is to recognize ourselves. And so here it is, you've
Exactly.
done the project and now you've just got to recognize that it's the the fruit, so the film work, the film or people watching it or liking it or even not liking it, that's not as important as having shaped this object and gone through the process and taking the courage and venturing through that path. So I definitely honor you for doing that.
Thank you. And thank you for this lovely conversation. And we got really deep, which is nice.
Thanks, Rachel. I appreciate it. Rachel Leyco, thank you for being on the show, writer, director, actor, and filmmaker. It was great to have you.
Thank you so much.
You're
Thanks. I had
welcome.
fun.
All right, everybody. We're out on Play It Forward. Till next time. Peace. Thanks for joining.